The Portland Trail Blazers didn't die because they were hopeless. That's too easy and too clean. They died because they're just good enough to make you talk yourself into something, young enough to dream on, tough enough to steal a playoff game, talented enough to make San Antonio sweat for a minute, then finally flawed enough that eventually the whole thing just cracked open. This wasn't a corpse you found in November. This was a team that got to April with a pulse. Then Victor Wembanyama walked back into the room. Welcome to Postmortem. Tonight's subject, the Portland Trail Blazers, cause of death, insufficient present tense. Now, before we cut them open, give Portland some credit. This was a 42-40 team. Not great, but not fake. They finished 8th in the West, which means they weren't invited to the playoffs because the league was being polite. They earned their way into this room. Scoot Henderson took real steps. Denny Avdia became more than just a nice idea. Drew Holiday gave them adult supervision. Donovan Clingan gave them size, and Tumani Camara gave them teeth. Robert Williams III gave them real minutes when healthy, and Shaden Sharp still had that "what if the ceiling is higher than we think" type of glow. Around all that, Portland had a weird season. Coaching weirdness, ownership weirdness, Damian Lillard's emotional return, hanging over the franchise even while he's still not available to actually play. A lot of moving parts, a lot of franchise fog. Somehow through it all, the Blazers are still there, and that's not nothing. Portland came into the series as the underdog, but they weren't a joke. The Spurs were the number 2 seed. They have Wembanyama. They have De'Aaron Fox. They have Stephon Castle. They had enough secondary violence to survive, even when things get weird. And things did get weird. Portland lost game 1, and then they stole game 2 from San Antonio. Scoot Henderson gave them 31. Wembanyama left with a concussion, and the Blazers came back. Suddenly, the series is 3-1, and there's a window. But then Portland went home and lost games 3 and 4. That's the real death sequence, not game 5. Game 5 is the body being found. Game 3 and 4 were the wound. The second half of game 3. Official cause of death, insufficient present tense. The Blazers had future. They have names. They have developmental wins. They have reasons for optimism. But San Antonio has now. Portland had Scoot Henderson trying to become the guy. San Antonio had Wembanyama already being a problem the sport hasn't figured out. Portland has Donovan Clingan learning playoff basketball in real time. San Antonio has Wembanyama turning the paint into a restricted zone. Portland had Denny Avdia doing useful, connective, winning player things. San Antonio's got De'Aaron Fox bending the game with speed, plus Castle and Dylan Harper giving the Spurs enough extra creation to keep Portland from loading everything at one spot. That's the difference. The Blazers had a lot of this could become something. The Spurs had this is already something, and that's the distinction that killed Portland. Let's get into the autopsy. Symptom 1, the offense got small. Not literally, they have size. But against San Antonio, the floor shrank. The lanes got smaller, the decisions got faster, the windows got meaner. Every drive felt like it had to be negotiated with Wembanyama's wingspan in mind. Scoot could still get downhill, and Avdia could still make plays. Holiday could stabilize possessions. But the Blazers didn't have enough clean, repeatable offense against this level of defense. Symptom 2, center minutes became a stress test. Donovan Clingan is going to be good. He may become very good. But this was a brutal assignment. Young bigs don't usually enjoy being introduced to playoff basketball through Victor Wembanyama. Robert Williams III gave him good minutes. He helped. He looked more comfortable in some stretches. But we need to solve Wembanyama with the center rotation debate. Not where you want to spend your April. Symptom 3, the Blazers couldn't hold the emotional high ground. Game 2 gave them the series. Not literally, but emotionally. They stole one in San Antonio. They got the split. Wembanyama's status was uncertain, and they were going home. That's when a young team starts to think maybe the series has turned. But then the Spurs won in Portland without Wembanyama. Then Wembanyama came back, and San Antonio won again. But medically, this thing started in Portland. The time of death may go on the Game 5 certificate, But the vital organs started shutting down when the Blazers lost control of Game 3 after halftime, even though they stayed alive enough to show a little pulse here in the fourth quarter tonight. But that's where the end of Game 3, it's where the series stopped being a young team with a puncher's chance, and it became a young team learning how expensive their missed chances are going to cost. Game 3 made it official. Sorry, Game 5 just made it official. There was false hope here. It was real, and that's why this one's interesting. Game 2 wasn't a fluke, not in the lazy sense. Scoot Henderson didn't hallucinate 31 points. Portland didn't accidentally win a playoff game. They defended, they competed, and they closed. They got real plays from Holiday, Williams, Kamara, Avdia, and Klingon. Now, there was a version of this series where Portland comes home, tied 1-1, grabs momentum, and turns the whole thing into a 6 or 7 game knife fight. That version exists somewhere else. On our plane of existence, San Antonio erased it. And that's the cruelty of a good false hope. It's not stupid, it's plausible. That's why it hurts. So, what survives this season? Scoot Henderson survives, not as a finished product or as a coordinated franchise savior, but as a real player who has a real playoff moment. That matters. Denny Avdia survives because players like that survive everything. He fits winning basketball. He can pass, defend, cut, rebound. He can make sense of possessions that would otherwise turn into smoke. Toumani Camara survives because every good team needs someone who treats defense like a personal insult. Donovan Klingon survives, even if the series was rough, especially if the series was rough. Big men learn by getting dragged into deep water. He got dragged. Robert Williams III survives the body. Robert Williams III arrives if the body allows it, which is always the sentence with Williams. Drew Holiday survives as the adult in the room, although Portland has to decide exactly how much adult supervision it needs versus how much future runway it wants. And the fan base survives with something more useful than empty optimism. They have evidence. Not enough evidence to say Portland's close to a title. That's nonsense. But enough evidence to say this was not just another year wandering through the rebuild desert. Now, what didn't survive? The idea that Portland's ready to skip steps. They're not ready to skip steps. The Blazers are not one cute playoff upset away. They're not one hot Scoot game away, or they're not one if Klingon develops away. They still need more top-end certainty. They need cleaner late-game offense, and they still need to decide what this roster is when Lillard returns. Holiday's presence, Scoot's development, Avdia's rise, and Klingon's future all sit in the same room. There is a team here. There's just not yet a final answer, and the playoffs are very rude to teams that bring partial answers. Official ruling is death by timeline collision. The Blazers brought tomorrow into a fight with today, and tomorrow has promise, but today had Wembayama. Tomorrow has Scoot's growth, Klingon's education, Avdia's emergence, Kamara's edge, and a fan base that finally gets to watch meaningful basketball again. Today had San Antonio putting a 62-team win on the floor, then asking Portland to solve a problem that it wasn't yet built to solve. So no, the season wasn't a failure for Portland, but it's over. The Portland Trailblazers are eliminated from championship contention. And the biggest lesson the Warriors should take from this one, ahead of schedule means you still have a schedule. Well, thanks for watching.